Welcome back, listeners. Ready to dive into a world where magic meets ambition?
Always up for a challenge. Where are we headed today?
A day we're uncovering the secrets of Manaheim Academy's Crimson Tigers.
Ah, the Crimson Tigers. Even outside Manaheim, their reputation precedes them.
They're known for their drive, strategic minds, and yeah, maybe a touch of ruthlessness.
A fascinating combination. What kind of sources do we have to work with on this deep dive?
We've got excerpts from a document simply titled crimsontigers.pdf, and let me tell you, it's a juicy one. Think Gryffindor meets Slytherin, but with even more intensity.
Sounds like my kind of reading material.
First things first, for those not familiar with Manaheim Academy, it's a school where students are sorted into houses. Each one's like a unique learning community.
Right, I remember. Encourages specific skills and values, healthy competition, all that.
Exactly. But they collaborate across houses too, so it's not all about rivalry.
A bit of both of them. A dynamic system.
Definitely. But today, the Crimson Tigers are in the spotlight. And right away, this document highlights how exclusive they are. Only about 10% of the student body.
Still a significant number though, right?
Oh yeah, we're talking about 3,000 students. But still, that selectivity, it speaks volumes.
Sets them apart from the start. Likely fuels their competitive spirit too.
And speaking of competitive, they're described as ambitious, driven, natural leaders. The overachievers of Manaheim.
Not surprising, given what we've heard. What else stands out?
Well, they value mastery, calculated risk, strategic thinking, all that. But it's this one phrase, the ends justify the means. Now that's intriguing.
Ooh, yeah. That's a loaded statement. Suggests they might prioritize results over, well, maybe ethics.
Exactly. What are your initial thoughts on that? How do you think that plays out in the school environment?
It's got to lead to conflict, right? Especially with houses that have different values.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, what price are they willing to pay for success? And what impact does that have on everyone else?
Big questions. Makes you wonder if their ambition is a strength or maybe a weakness in disguise.
A bit of both, perhaps. Depends on how it's wielded.
To understand that better, let's meet the head of this house, Professor Ruth Roslin.
Okay, lay it on me. What's she like?
Described as intimidating, regal, with a silver bob, opulent attire, and these calculating eyes, what's your first impression?
Someone who commands respect, for sure. Maybe even fear. Sounds like she values discipline, strategy. Could see her running the classroom like, well, a battleground.
Interesting you say battleground because her teaching style is described as ruthless. She has zero patience for mediocrity, rewards ingenuity even if it bends the rules.
But punishes failure harshly, I bet.
You bet. It's all about teaching resilience, apparently. Effective or damaging, what do you think?
It's tough to say. Pushing students can be good, helps them grow. But this constant emphasis on winning could create a culture of fear, maybe stifle some creativity. Reminds me of the debate around high-stakes testing.
Oh, that's a great parallel. Does it create excellence or just pressure?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hard to say what Professor Roslin's methods produce in the long run. Well-rounded mages or just very effective strategists.
And speaking of strategy, her motto is win or learn to win better. Pretty much sums up the Crimson Tigers, right?
In a nutshell, yeah.
And to achieve that, she creates these high-stakes scenarios for her students.
Right.
Pushes them to think strategically, adapt.
Sounds intense. Like they're living on a chessboard 24/7.
Which brings us to their traditions, which are as intense and demanding as you'd expect. First up, the gauntlet duels.
Okay, tell me more. Gauntlet duels sounds ominous.
It's an annual event open to all houses, tests magical skills, strategy, problem solving, even physical stuff.
Yeah.
Winner is champion of the year, their name etched on a grand trophy. Imagine that pressure.
Oh, it must be immense, especially for a Crimson Tiger. They're not just competing for themselves, but for the whole house, right?
Absolutely. And with all houses participating, it's about proving your house's approach is the best.
Adds a whole other layer to it.
Then there's ruthless reflection, which is as intimidating as it sounds.
Ruthless reflection. Okay, you've got my attention. What's that about?
Monthly meeting, Professor Roslin, in front of the whole house, dissects failures, mistakes, weaknesses, blunt advice. The goal, to teach resilience, self-improvement.
Sounds more like a trial by fire,
Yeah.
honestly. I can see it working for some, push them to do better, but for others, morale crushing.
Right. Makes you think about how different people respond to feedback, even if her intentions are good.
Maybe that is part of the strategy. Weed out those who can't handle the heat. Cultivate a core group, truly resilient.
Could be. Definitely fits with their focus on excellence above all else. And speaking of high stakes, we got to talk about the Masters game.
Lay it on me. The master's game, eh?
Year-long event, Professor Roslin gives them cryptic tasks, challenges, all about strategy, problem-solving, anticipating your opponent. It's a mental marathon, points awarded, the winner gets crowned master strategist, bragging rights, and a custom magical artifact.
Wow. Not just about raw power then, but using your brain, your cunning. Very Crimson Tiger.
And you know, it creates some serious rivalries, even within the house. Late-night planning sessions, alliances, betrayals. The pressure must be insane.
A pressure cooker environment, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably produces some seriously skilled mages.
No doubt. So we've got this picture, driven, ambitious, ruthless. But what about their aesthetic? Any guesses on their house colors?
I mean, come on, crimson.
Bingo. Crimson, black and white.
Classic, powerful, a little dangerous even.
Spot on. Mascot's a tiger, naturally. And their common room is described as having this open layout, industrial modern, high ceilings, lots of red, big modern furniture. What do you think? How's that environment reinforce their values?
Well, open layout probably encourages collaboration, strategic talks, all that. And the industrial modern design maybe reflects their focus on, like, efficiency, functionality.
Makes sense.
High ceilings, the spaciousness. Could create a sense of grandeur, ambition, a constant reminder of where they are, where they're headed.
I love that interpretation. Stylish and functional, ambition woven right into the space. But let's move beyond looks and talk achievements. The Crimson Tigers are all about results.
Let's hear about those wins.
They dominate magical tournaments, of course, hold all sorts of records, but they've also contributed to the world beyond Manaheim. Some alumni actually founded the Mage Knights Order.
The Mage Knights, the elite warrior mages. Wow.
Yep. Protecting the realm, maintaining order.
Shows they're not just about personal success, but using their skills for something bigger, even if that something is defined on their own terms.
Interesting point. Is it genuine desire to protect or a need for control? What do you think?
Hard to say. It's probably a mix, isn't it? Altruism, ambition, who knows?
It's never simple, especially with this house. And speaking of pushing boundaries, they're known for innovation in combat magic.
Yeah.
New spells, techniques, always pushing the limits. I think that gives them an edge in conflicts.
Absolutely. If they're constantly developing new magic, that's got to give them a tactical advantage.
Always one step ahead, like they're playing 40 chess.
Exactly. That strategic foresight is what makes them so formidable.
Okay, we've covered personality, leadership, traditions, their look, their achievements. Now let's meet some notable alumni. People who embody the Crimson Tiger spirit went on to make their mark. First up, Mario Magnotti, war hero turned advisor, known for his ruthless strategies.
Sounds like a classic Crimson Tiger, taking those principles out into the world.
Then we've got Rebel Lum, master alchemist, revolutionized potions, both combat and healing. Kind of unexpected, don't you think?
It is, yeah. But alchemy requires a similar mindset, I guess. Pushing boundaries, experimentation. It takes precision, ambition, risk-taking, all very Crimson Tiger.
Great point. And lastly, we've got Prince Raphael Lafayette, won a battle tournament young, became a ruler. Bit controversial, but successful. Any parallels to real-world leaders?
Oh, tons. History's full of leaders like that. Ambition, strategic thinking, making tough calls. Some are celebrated, some criticized. Lafayette's a good example of both sides of that coin, I think.
Makes you think about the legacy he'll leave behind. Hero or tyrant. But that's a deep dive for another day. For now, let's shift back to Manaheim. How do the Crimson Tigers interact with the other houses? Things get really interesting here.
I bet. Does their ambition lead to domination, collaboration, or are they constantly butting heads with folks who have different values?
It's a bit of everything, honestly. The document gives us a peek into their views on the other houses, and it's a mix of admiration, rivalry, maybe even a bit of grudging respect.
Oh, this is good. Sounds like a recipe for some epic drama, maybe some surprising alliances, too.
You got it. Let's start with the Golden Eagles. They're known for boldness, creativity, a little unpredictable.
Total opposite of the Crimson Tiger's structured approach.
Right. The Tigers admire their ingenuity, out-of-the-box thinking. But they also find them unfocused, lacking strategy. Talented, but undisciplined.
That clash, raw talent versus calculated precision, how's that play out between them?
The Golden Eagles love to push their buttons, challenge their control, their rule-following, pranks, disruptions.
Classic chaotic versus lawful, huh?
Exactly. But under the rivalry, I think there's respect for that creativity. After all, both houses value innovation just differently.
Two sides of the same coin, you know?
Yeah.
Different ways to be a successful mage.
I like that. Now for the Azure Bears. Hard work, discipline, strict rule followers, lawful good, through and through.
Oh, that's got to cause some friction.
Big time. The Crimson Tigers respect their work ethic, their rule following, but they also see those things as weaknesses. Too rigid, predictable.
That's a core difference. Azure Bears, playing by the rules. Crimson Tigers, bend 'em, break 'em if it gets results.
And that creates tension, especially when it clashes with the Azure Bears' sense of fairness.
Makes you wonder if those arguments ever escalate. Or do they keep it civil, despite the differences?
Good question. We'll dig into specific rivalries soon. But first, the final house. Verdant deer. Compassion, empathy, connection to nature. They're the healers, the peacemakers.
Complete opposite of the Crimson Tigers. Ambition versus compassion, huh?
Head-on collision of values. The Tigers see them as naive, idealistic. Think empathy and cooperation are weaknesses.
Harsh. But it tracks with their ends justify the means thing. The world's a game to them. And compassion, a luxury they can't afford.
It's tough to hear, but it makes sense, given their environment.
Makes you wonder, though, have they ever met a verdant deer who really challenged their worldview?
Now, that's a good question. Could reveal something deeper about them. Maybe beneath the ambition, there's a sliver of doubt, a hope that there's a different way to do things.
Intriguing. I'm definitely curious to see how that plays out in their interactions.
Before we go there, gotta mention, the Crimson Tigers, they do collaborate sometimes, despite their reputation.
Really? I wouldn't have guessed.
Who with? During festivals, they've teamed up with the Golden Eagles for performances. Imagine that. Creativity and precision combined.
Wow, yeah. Even rivals can find common ground, I guess. At least for a little while.
Shows that even with magic and ambition, there's space for collaboration.
The world isn't black and white after all.
And it's not just festivals. Academics, too. Azure Bears and Crimson Tigers are surprisingly good at strategy together.
Makes sense, though. Both value planning, discipline, different motivations, same skills.
Azure Bears, duty and rules. Crimson Tigers, winning. Plain and simple.
But in a classroom, those differences could actually be an asset.
Totally. And it's not just the Azure Bears. In athletics, the Crimson Tigers and Golden Eagles, they push each other to excel.
Interesting. Individual achievement this time, not team strategy.
Maybe it's about respect for talent. Competition, even when it's fierce, can bring out the best, right?
Definitely. Rivalry doesn't have to be all bad. It can be motivating.
So, are the Crimson Tigers driven, ambitious, ruthless? Yes. But they're also capable of collaboration, respect, even admiration for those with different values. It's complex.
A fascinating case study.
And it makes you wonder.
Is their success sustainable? Can they stay on top without losing their integrity? Or will ambition be their downfall? Big questions. Ones we'll explore as we dig into their rivalries. See what happens when their philosophy clashes with the other houses. Let's get into it then. Those rivalries.
Yeah.
Especially curious about, well, how those clashes with other houses show us what their ambition can lead to.
Right. The document highlights 3 big ones. Each gives us a different angle on the Crimson Tigers, their strengths, weaknesses, all that. First up, Azure Bears versus Crimson Tigers. Ethics versus ambition, head-to-head.
Ooh, that's a good one. Plays out everywhere, not just in a magical school.
Exactly. The Azure Bears, they're all about rules, fairness, total challenge to that win-at-all-costs mentality.
Right, I remember from our Azure Bears deep dive, they're hardcore about that stuff.
Yep. And the document says these clashes often happen when the Tigers bend the rules or just break them to get ahead. Infuriates the Bears, who see that as, like, betraying everything Manaheim stands for.
Makes sense. Highlights a big question, doesn't it? Is it ever okay to compromise your principles to succeed?
Tough one. Azure Bears would say, no way, integrity's everything. But the Tigers, they might argue that adaptability, strategic thinking, those are essential in a messy world.
It's a debate that could go on forever. But it does make you think, right? About the compromises we make. At work. In our relationships. Where's the line?
It's a constant balancing act. Ambition on one side, ethics on the other.
And it sounds like the Crimson Tigers, well, they tip the scales pretty heavily towards ambition, at least from the Azure Bears' point of view.
For sure. And there might be another layer to this rivalry, too, something I noticed in the document. It hints that the Azure Bears, a lot of them come from, well, maybe more humble backgrounds. Hard work, dedication, that's their way up.
Interesting. Whereas the Crimson Tigers, with their strategy, risk-taking, could be they represent a more privileged group.
That's what I was thinking, as a whole other dimension. Right, like their values come from different life experiences.
Yeah, instantly. Makes you wonder, do the Crimson Tigers even see the consequences of their actions? Especially when those actions affect people who, well, have less power than them?
That's the question, isn't it? Speaks to the whole issue of privilege, how it shapes our values, how we see the world, how we treat each other.
Big stuff.
Okay, on to rivalry number 2. Crimson Tigers versus Golden Eagles. This one's all about dominance versus unpredictability.
Ooh, clash of styles.
Hmm.
Structured brilliance versus chaotic creativity. I'm here for it.
Right. The Tigers, even though they admire that Golden Eagle ingenuity, they see them as a threat to their top spot, always trying to anticipate their moves, counter their weird tactics, stay in control. But the Eagles, they're slippery, unpredictable, always one step ahead.
A constant chess match where the rules keep changing.
With high stakes, both houses are super competitive. They want to be the best, but how they go about it, totally different.
Shows there's more than one way to succeed, I guess. Sometimes those unorthodox methods, they're the most effective.
And sometimes the toughest opponent isn't the one who plays by the rules, but the one who rewrites them.
Exactly. The Golden Eagles are a wild card. Chaos the Crimson Tigers can't control. Exciting, but also, yeah, dangerous.
Keeps them on their toes, though.
Definitely. Complacency is the death of progress.
Yeah.
The Golden Eagles make sure the Tigers never get too comfy, too sure of themselves.
Okay, last rivalry. This one gets to the core of who they are. Verdant Deer versus Crimson Tigers. Compassion versus competition.
This goes beyond just tactics, right? This is about their whole philosophy.
It is. The Verdant Deer, with their empathy, harmony, connection to nature, they challenge the Tigers' whole worldview, their individualism, ruthlessness.
Right, from our Verdant Deer deep dive, I remember, it's all about interconnectedness for them. Everything's part of a bigger picture.
Exactly. They question the Tigers' pursuit of power, their willingness to sacrifice, well, basically everything for ambition, and their lack of concern for who gets hurt along the way.
It's two totally different ways of seeing the world, colliding.
The Tigers, they see the world as this game of strategy. Winner takes all. Verdant Deer. It's a web of relationships, fragile. Cooperation and compassion, those are essential.
Do they ever find common ground? Or is it just constant misunderstanding?
The document says most of the time. It's philosophical debates, ethical challenges. They just don't get each other.
Like they're speaking different languages.
Totally. Tigers, all logic, strategy. Deer, intuition, empathy. The Tigers can't fathom that. And the deer, baffled by the Tiger's lack of compassion.
Classic example of how different values, they create this gap between people,
Ugh.
even when they're working towards like the same overall goal.
It makes you think about our own world. How different ideologies, they cause so much conflict, division.
For sure. Makes you appreciate empathy, understanding, trying to bridge that gap, even when it's hard.
And it raises the question, can we really succeed as individuals, as a society, if we lose our compassion, if we don't care about others?
That's a question worth sitting with for a while. A challenge for all of us, whether we're in a magic school or just, living our lives.
It really is. No easy solutions. But hey, exploring this stuff, even in a fantastical world like Manaheim, it can give us some perspective, right?
Yeah.
Help us understand our own choices.
Yeah, I think so. It's like holding up a mirror, seeing those forces at play, ambition, competition, all that, how they shape our lives.
And while we've been focused on the Crimson Tigers, those rivalries, gotta remember, these houses aren't just like one big blob of personality.
Right. Inside each house, there's a whole range of people, beliefs, different ways of approaching life.
We love to categorize stereotype, but the reality, it's messy, way more nuanced.
Absolutely. You got Crimson Tigers who probably struggle with that ruthless philosophy, Azure Bearers who question all those rules, even Verdant Deer who, feel that pull of ambition, power.
Those internal conflicts, those individual stories, that's what makes it interesting. Even in a rigid system, people find a way to, well, be themselves.
And it's those individuals, the ones who push back, who question things, they're the ones who often create real change in their communities, in the world.
Makes you wonder, are there Crimson Tigers out there who are like secretly doubting everything, wrestling with their conscience, trying to find a way to be ambitious, but also compassionate?
Maybe. Maybe those are the ones who will bridge the gap between all the houses. Bring some understanding where there used to be just conflict.
I'd like to think so. But let's bring it back to our listeners. What can we take away from this deep dive? From the Crimson Tigers, their wins, their struggles, all those complicated relationships.
I think it's about seeing ambition for what it is. Multifaceted. Can be a force for good, driving progress, pushing people to be their best. But it can also be destructive, leading to, well, all the stuff we've talked about. Ruthlessness, disregard for others.
It's a reminder that success, however you define it, it shouldn't come at the cost of your integrity, your compassion.
Right. It's a call to look at our own ambitions. Why are we doing what we're doing? What impact are we having on the people around us?
Are we trying to make a difference? Or just chasing power, recognition? Are we open to working with people who see things differently? Or are we all about winning no matter what? Questions we all got to grapple with.
And think about the legacy we want to leave. What do we want to be remembered for?
So listener, as we wrap up this deep dive, this journey into Manaheim Academy, we leave you with this. The Crimson Tigers, they show us that drive, ambition, those are powerful forces. But they come with a responsibility, a choice. Striving for excellence is great, but not if it means sacrificing who you are, how you treat others. True success, it's not a solo mission. It's about collaborating, understanding, bridging those divides.
Well said. Until next time, everyone.
See you on our next deep dive.